What is up, guys? Today we'll be discussing the LG V40 versus the G7 ThinQ. So these are both around 200 bucks. You can find the G7 a little cheaper on eBay, and this one is around, I think, around 223 or 250, somewhere in that range. Again, you can find these cheaper if you do shop around, but they've come down in price dramatically over the years. Alright, so even though the price came down, these are still two very underrated phones. So hardware wise, they're pretty much identical. You do have a glass back and metal design on both these phones. Now you do have a triple camera setup on the V40, which we will get into. Both fingerprint scanners on the back. On the G7 you have the dual camera setup, and you have the same button layout. Pretty much you have your power button on the right side, and then on the left side you have your volume rockers and your Google Assistant button. Down below you have the same boombox speaker. You also have the USB Type-C, and you also have that 3.5mm jack. Alright, so if you take a look at the displays here, you will see that the G7 does have a smaller display than the V40, and it is actually two different types of displays. So for the V40 you have a POLED display, 6.4 inches. It is a 1440p display, 537 for the PPI, and it is also an always on display. Now you have a slightly smaller IPS display on the G7, and it is also a 1440p display, 564 for the PPI, and it is also always on even for an IPS display. So out of the two, if you're very media focused, then the V40 is where you're gonna want to go. The colors are better, it's a bigger display, and overall I just find myself being more immersed in media when I'm using this device rather than the G7. But if you like smaller phones, more compact, then you're going to want to get the G7. It still has a beautiful display even though it's IPS. And now some people don't like OLED displays or AMOLED displays because they have screen burn issues sometimes, so that is something to consider. I've never experienced that, but you know, it is something to think about. Now they both have the exact same boombox speaker, so let's go ahead and make sure. So pretty much the same speaker quality on here for sure, and it sounds excellent. You can feel the phone when it vibrates, so excellent for, you know, media. Now both these phones are running Android 9, and they will get Android 10, so that is really great for LG fans. Now on this G7 you have the Snapdragon 845 and the Adreno 630, micro SD support. You also have 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here. Now you have the same Snapdragon 845 on the V40, Adreno 630 micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage, but here's the thing, you have 6 gigs of RAM on the V40. So if I'm into gaming and stuff and I just want to be safe and be future proof, then I would probably go with the V40. But they both actually play the same games on high. It plays everything on high, Fortnite, PUBG, whatever. So they both, the experience is the same as far as graphics and stuff like that. But like I said, the display makes a big difference and stuff like that. So if you're into gaming, again, I would go with the V40 unless you want a more compact phone. So on the V40 you have a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide, shooting 2160p. You have dual front facing cameras, a 8 megapixel standard and a 5 megapixel wide, shoots in 1080p. So the front facing camera is definitely useful because it's a wide, so if you take a lot of selfies, like a group selfie, then it's great to have that. The V or the G7 does lack that. It also lacks the telephoto lens. Now on the G7 you have a 16 megapixel standard, a 16 megapixel ultra wide, shoots in 2160p, 8 megapixel wide for the front facing that shoots in 1080p as well. So as you can see on the side, you're missing that telephoto lens, but you still have the ultra wide, which I think is the most important. So if you're really into cameras, then the V40 is the way to go because you also have that front facing wide camera as well. So if you're just taking a lot of photos, then you're going to want to spend your money on the V40 for sure. Now as far as like photos and stuff, it's pretty much the same from what I'm seeing image quality wise. You might see a difference in color because of the two display technologies, but when you put them on the computer, they're pretty much the same. They're taking the same pretty much images. Both have the same image processing. Here is that wide angle shot. Here is another shot. So as you can see, they're pretty much the same in terms of image quality, but like I said, you have that telephoto and you have that wide angle. So if you're really camera focused, the V40 is going to be the obvious choice. Now the V40 has more RAM, but let's go ahead and do a speed test. It should still be the same speed. 3, 2, 1. Let's see, 3, 2, 1. Now you will be able to keep more applications open on the V40. The G7 will kick them out. Let's try Call of Duty. 3, 2, 1. So the G7 got it by just a hair. Now both these phones have NFC. They both have the fingerprint scanner on the back, which is pretty much identical. They both work fast. Let's see, boom, boom. Pretty much instant, so no problem there. Extremely fast face unlock as well. Now you have a 3000 milliamp battery on the G7, 18 watt quick charging, and you also have wireless charging as well. And on the G7 you actually will get around 7 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time. I did a battery drain test for both these phones. On the V40 it's kind of a little disappointing that they didn't put a bigger battery in here, a 3300 milliamp battery, so it's just bigger by 300 milliamps, but 18 watt fast charging. You also have wireless charging as well. Now this phone actually gets around 6 hours of screen on time, so that's an hour and 30 minutes less, but that's the price to pay, I guess, maybe for having this OLED display, and it's just overall bigger, so it would have made sense for them to put a 4000 milliamp battery in such a big phone, but hey. Alright, so that pretty much sums up today's video. So which phone are you guys going with, the V40 or the G7? Be sure to let me know why, and I will catch you guys in the next one.